I will admit I got caught in one of those liturgical quandaries today. So the gospel of today, which is the feeding of the 5,000, was the gospel for yesterday. So then you have to substitute tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow's gospel for today, and then tomorrow there's an alternate gospel. It's Monday morning. I obviously have not had enough coffee yet, so we'll go on. But we finally got the correct gospel, which is Peter walking on the water. And it's very interesting that I kind of messed it up this morning, because the first line I have in my homily is, "What a timely gospel we have for today." So timely, I almost didn't read it, right? But I think the gospel of the day, of Peter walking on the water, really speaks to our current situation so well. So what happened? Let's recap it in case I confused you all. The disciples are in a boat and they're being rocked about. They're being tossed about in the midst of a storm. They're scared, they're uncertain, they're out of control, they're really in the middle of chaos. And then we hear that Peter goes out into the water. And at first he walks. At first he's good. He's very calm and things are going well. But then when he senses the wind, he becomes terrified. He loses his footing, he becomes unsteady, he's disoriented, and eventually he begins to sink. Now, I don't know about all of you, but in these days, sometimes I feel like the disciples and I feel like Peter. Just like them, our lives and our world, it seems that we are in the midst of a storm. It seems that we are very much being rocked about, being tossed about, that we are in much uncertainty. Some days my life just feels like we're in the middle of chaos. There's a global pandemic going on, in case I need to remind you. And along with that, we are here getting in August, a lot of questions about school. What's going to happen? Feels like things are out of control. Add to that civil unrest. It makes us confused and frightened, and for some of our brothers and sisters, they're even unsure of their own safety. In politics, the partisans keep bickering and fighting, and there are literal storms among us. There are wildfires out west, hurricanes down south, and storms right here in the middle of Dayton. And of course, tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of the mass shooting in Dayton, where 10 people lost their lives in the Oregon district. And many more were wounded and scarred, both physically and emotionally. Like the disciples, we find ourselves on very unstable ground. We find ourselves with much worry and even sadness. And even we are like Peter. In my life, there are days where I feel like, okay, I can get through today. I can figure this all out. And then something happens and I get rocked off my feet. Plans that I made have to be totally upended because we learn new information. One moment we are confident and comfortable. The next moment we are losing our footing and it feels like we are sinking. Now I admit I have just painted a pretty grim picture of our reality today. But I do so to remind us that all is not lost. Even in the midst of chaos, even in great uncertainty, there is great hope. So let's go back to the gospel. In the midst of their own fear, Jesus simply says, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." And in the midst of Peter's doubt and his unsteadiness, Jesus simply stretches out his hand, catches him, and raises him up. I do believe that in the midst of our fears and uncertainties, in the chaos of the storms that surround us, Jesus gives us that same message. What he said to the disciples, what he did for Peter, is what he says to us and what he does for us. Jesus says, "Take courage, I am here. Do not be afraid." And if we look around, Jesus is there to stretch out his hand, to catch us, and to raise us up, lest we fall. Now, I say this not because we all just need to feel good today. I don't think that this is even a Pollyanna attitude of false optimism. But I say this to remind us that here is our hope. This is what will get us through the storms of our lives. Here is our salvation. It is the promise of Jesus that he is here among us. It is the whisper of Jesus that speaks to our hearts saying, "Do not be afraid, I am here." It's the promise that the Lord will catch us. He will stretch out his hand. He will raise us up. That Jesus is here with us in the storm. He will bring us from the midst of chaos. That he will calm the waves around us. He will calm our fears. He will calm those winds that are set to push us aside. And if we look for him, if we walk toward him, if we reach out to him, we will find him right there supporting us, encouraging us, and helping us to get through the storms of our lives. And so this gospel today gives us an invitation. That invitation is to put our trust in Jesus, to put our faith in the Lord, who is our solid ground, who is our firm foundation, who is the calm in the storm. In those moments of our lives when the storms seem to overwhelm us, let's just cry out, "Help me, Lord. Let me see you here with me." When the wind seems to get too much and it's pushing us away, breathe in the wind of the Spirit. Take a deep breath and remember that Jesus is in our midst. And those times when we might begin to falter or sink or lose our balance, maybe we look out for maybe we look for the outstretched hand of Jesus that comes to us in the form of a friend, of a neighbor, of a family member, or of a community. The promise that Jesus made in the gospel is the promise that he makes to us today. It is that hope, that firm foundation that he gives to us. So let's remember today, sisters and brothers, that Jesus is right here in the midst of our storm, in the midst of our uncertainty and chaos. Jesus is here reaching out his hand, catching us, raising us up. And he says to each one of us, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid."